Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let the record show for roll call that everybody is here except for Ms. West, Ms. Jones, and Mayor Engen, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Okay. He's right here. He's right there, guys. He can hear everything we're saying. Okay, so minutes. We have a lot of minutes to approve. Minutes from the May 22nd, the May 25th, and the June 1st City Council meetings. 2 of those were special meetings. Are there any changes to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, they are approved. Now it is time to schedule the committee meetings for this week. Ms. Rabine?
Thanks. We only have 3 committees scheduled for this coming Wednesday, the 7th of June. Parks and Conservation will start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and go to 2:05. Public Safety and Health will start at 2:10 and go to 2:40. And Public Works will round out the day from 2:45 to 3:15. All those meetings are being held right here in the City Council chambers at 140 West Pine.
Committee chairs or anyone have any comments about those? Okay. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? If you have public comment, come on up to the mic, say your name for the record, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Candy Matthew Jenkins, 1211 Cooper Street. Still reading from the Soviet Art of Brainwashing, Psychopolitics, the Art of Mental Healing. Having mastered these details fully, he should be practicing upon criminals and prisoners or inmates available to him, produce the hypnotic trance by drugs, and drive home post-hypnotic suggestions by pain administered to the drug person. He should then study the reactions of the person when awakened, and should give him the stimulus response signal, which would throw into action the commands given while the subject was in a drugged state of duress. By much practice, he can learn the threshold dosages of various drugs, the amount of distress in terms of electric shock, and addition drug shock necessary to produce the optimum obedience to the commands. He should also satisfy himself that there is no possible method known to man. There must be no possible method known to man of bringing the patient into awareness of what has happened to him, keeping him in a state of obedience and response while ignorant of its cause.
Is there any other public comment on items not on the agenda?
My name is Bob Moore. I want to read a letter to you that was written to the editor at the Missoula newspaper, May 28th, 2017. I run a mock city government. Boy, does that sound like me. Here's a quick rundown of how Missoula leaders are wasting your money. $7 million for mall developers, $4 million for Reserve Street pedestrian bridge, $3.2 million for a downtown parking structure, $3 million to buy EKO compost, $1.6 million for the new downtown parking meters, $1.6 million to alter Higgins Avenue, $1.5 million to Stockman Bank for construction, $1 million for Mary Avenue improvements, $200,000 for a one-way street study last month, $122,000 a year for parking meter upkeep, $50,000 to Berkshire Hathaway to improve their building, $50,000 to study Brook Street last month, $48,000 to hire someone to look at parking gates, $20,000 to study Higgins Avenue last month, $16,000 paid to a California company for website work. All of that comes out to $23.4 million. Of particular interest to me is 4 of them that adds up to $12.7 million. Continuing his letter. Meanwhile, we're not spending money on the things we actually need. For instance, just $340,000 is spent fixing potholes each year, and they're nowhere near complete as a result of this winter. How about the bursting at the seams police evidence room? We made the police use that for an additional 2 years, even after we knew the room could jeopardize court cases. To me, these are clear signs that city priorities are totally messed up. We're spending money for things on the want list, not things that we actually need. This is a big reason, and this was him, for running for the Missoula City Council this year, written by Greg Strandberg. A couple of serious things wrong with this letter. Well, yeah, I guess wrong. It's nowhere near complete. For example, the $1.5 million, whatever it was, to Calabell Staples is not on here. $50,000 to purdy up a building for a dentist, and many, many other things. They're not on this list. And it doesn't say whether this is from the calendar year 2016 or half the year or the period that it covers. But these are his thinking on where we're wasting money. But it's more important than wasting. We're taking money from taxpayers and giving it to wealthy developers in this city. And I have just about lost my mind on why you're doing this. This is supposed to be one of the most liberal towns in the world, and it probably is. I always thought liberals meant you're helping the poor people, not taking from the poor people and or regular citizens, taking their taxes and giving it to the developers of the shopping center here in town. I hope you're enjoying what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Is there any other public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were approved in City Council committees by a unanimous vote. We save time at council meetings by voting on these items as a package. The city clerk will read the list aloud so citizens watching on MCAT will know what is on the consent agenda. We'll invite community comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine?
Thanks. Tonight's consent agenda has 6 items, and the first, as always, are the city's accounts payable. The first is to ratify claims, which are the city's accounts payable, in the amount of $565,575.73 for checks that were dated May 30th of 2017. Number 2 is to ratify claims related to the water acquisition in the amount of $2,483.85 for checks that were also dated on May 30th, 2017. Those are ratifications because City Council didn't meet last week because of Memorial Day holiday. Number 3 is to approve claims in the amount of $251,279.33 for checks that are dated for tomorrow, June 6, 2017. Number 4 is to set a public hearing on June 12, 2017 on a resolution that the City Council awarding Home Investment Partnership program and community development block grant funds to certain organizations, and directing staff to negotiate contracts and agreements with those organizations. Number 5 is to set a joint public hearing with the Missoula County Commissioners for June 26, 2017, on a resolution of the Missoula City Council to expend up to $17,000 of 2006 open space bond proceeds to cover transaction and project-related costs for a donated conservation easement across 50 acres of land owned by the Western Montana Retriever Club, adjacent to the Bitterroot River. And finally, number 6 is to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $1.6 million principal amount of tax increment urban renewal revenue bond series 2017A for urban renewal District 3 to finance the Mary Avenue West infrastructure improvements, prescribing the form and terms thereof and security therefore.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on any of the items on the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, point of order. Ms. Rabine misread one of the,
Yes.
it should be 12,000 for the Western Montana Retriever Club.
Which item are you on?
Number 5.
Number 5.
Expend up to $12,000 of 2006 open space bond proceeds.
Correct.
Not sure what I said, but probably 17. Oh,
That's my,
$5,000 less.
Okay, thank you for that point of order. Public comment.
Bob Moore. I'm opposed to number 6, Mary Avenue bond resolution to finance infrastructure improvements. The title of it is incorrect. It should state to spend $1.6 million for the benefit of the owners of the shopping center. That's the only reason it's being spent. That's the only reason the $7 million had been spent to carry Mary Avenue from Brooks to the river tracks. And now this is for the railroad tracks to the to Reserve Street. So I'm opposed to spending taxpayers' money on something just for the sole purpose of benefiting the owners of the shopping center malls. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on any of the items on the consent agenda? Any city council comments? Okay. It looks like we're ready for a roll call vote.
Okay, on the consent agenda, items number 1 through 6. Start roll with Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. Bentley votes yes. Cares votes yes. DeBari votes yes. Heddle votes yes. Hess votes yes. Marlar votes yes. Sweeney votes yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. And Wilkins votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
Okay, next is comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum. And we do have a couple of reports. The first is Jeff Stevens reporting on the community forum.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Stevens. I'm here this evening to report on the May 25th Community Forum meeting. I was moderator of that meeting, and we did have 2 presentations. The first was on the Moon Randolph Homestead presentation by Jennifer Barrett. And if any of you haven't been out to that homestead, I highly recommend it. It's a fascinating place. It gives you a really interesting, informative glimpse into Missoula's rural agricultural lifestyle in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And of course, this time of year is when they get quite active out there and hold different events. So I'd certainly highly recommend that you get out there and check the place out if you haven't seen it or if you haven't seen it recently. The other presentation was by Tim Winger, General Manager of Southgate Mall. And of course, he was at the meeting to inform us of all the activities and improvements and changes going on at Southgate Mall. If you've been driving down Brooks recently, you've noticed that there's a major new entrance to the mall being constructed even as we speak. And of course, Mr. Winger told us about the various retail and grocery opportunities that are going to be constructed out there. He also talked about the possibility of apartment and condominium housing being built in the mall area in sometime in the more distant future. Of course, being a movie buff, I was most interested in the luxury AMC 9-plex that's being constructed there right now. It's quite a massive building. I'm sure you've noticed it. But of course, I'm looking forward to being able to go there and watch a 3D movie and have dinner and drinks and recline in my leather luxury power recliner. And if the movie is not particularly good, you can just go to sleep. Which is not a bad idea, really. You know, of course, it occurred to me you can do exactly the same thing at home, or pretty much the same thing at home, for a lot less money. But the problem is that about midway through the movie, your wife's going to come along and call you a lazy slob and order you to go out and mow the lawn. So I do see the advantages of going to the mall instead. Anyway, we have a lot to look forward to out there. And our next community forum meeting is going to be moderated by Doug Grimm, and it'll be June 22nd, 2017. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And next we have an update from a report on the University District Neighborhood Council General Meeting.
Yes, thanks. My name's Dave Chrisman. I live at 435 East Beckwith. I was co-chair of the University District Neighborhood Council. Now I'm chair because we lost our other co-chair in the last election. He decided not to run, so we're working on that. But so I'm chair right now, so I'm reporting on the May 3rd District General Meeting. There were about 60 neighborhood residents present. We had presentations on the plan for a Broadway to Brooks traffic study, neighborhood parking zones, the ASUM bus, the big electric bus, or buses, I should say, and neighborhood compatibility standards, and a lively question and answer period with some representatives from the council. So first it started off, City Council Rep. Gwyn Jones introduced Jessica Morris, Missoula Transportation Planning Manager, who spoke in detail about a Broadway to Brooks traffic study. And then she took questions from folks attending, and there were quite a few questions about that possibility. Rod Austin, Director of Missoula Parking Commission, discussed possible impacts of expanding parking zones in the neighborhood and permits and other issues. He discussed parking in the university neighborhood and answered questions. He also noted that he would like to have a study of the situation before making any changes, and he needed the neighborhood to express some strong interest before he could recommend an expense like that study. Jordan Hess, Director of ASUM Transportation, discussed the 2 recently purchased zero-emission buses and how the buses addressed issues of noise and pollution, and at the same time were expected to be much more cost-effective than the old diesel buses. Next, Gwyn Jones talked about the University District Neighborhood Council's subcommittee on neighborhood compatibility, which she's been facilitating. After 3 meetings on the issue, it's resulted in a set of possible zoning solutions intended to address the interests brought out in the subcommittee. Tom Zabitz, Senior Planner with Missoula Development Services, helped with the presentation and the project itself. Jerry Ballas, who's been the co-chair of the leadership team, decided not to run for a 3rd term. So after giving Jerry a big round of applause, we elected a new member to the team, Mike Jakubchik. Council Representative John Wilkins, John DeBerry, and Gwyn Jones made comments and answered questions about a variety of things, including tourist homes, the mountain water purchase, rental inspections, urban deer. They never seem to go away. And eco-compost, a possible sale of the senior center, and snow removal in the neighborhood. I know we had a good meeting because most people were still there at the end. And a lot of them were still ready to ask a lot of questions, too. So even with all that good pizza we had, they all stayed awake and interested. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisman. Okay, public hearings. State law and city council rules set guidelines for inviting community comment in a formal way on certain issues. Following a staff report on each item, the city council and the mayor invite community comment. The city council normally votes on the same night as a public hearing unless one council member requests that it be returned to a city council committee for further consideration. And we have one public hearing tonight, and it's in land use and planning regarding the conditional use request at 2200 South 10th Street West for daycare center zoning. And we have Ms. Baker with the staff report. And is the applicant here tonight too? Or their representative? Okay. All right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Baker with Development Services. This proposal is for a conditional use from Stuart Armstrong of Campfire, Western Montana, to operate a daycare for more than 13 enrollees from an existing property located at 2200 South 10th Street West. Mr. Armstrong is here this evening along with Mr. Tony Moretti, his architect. Property is outlined in red on this slide and shown by the red star. It's at the intersection of 10th Street and Schilling, just beside Franklin Park. This area is part of Missoula's Ward 6 and the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood. The subject property and most of the surrounding area is zoned RM 2.7, which is residential multi-dwelling. The park itself is mainly RM 1-45, which is also residential multifamily zoning. The strip alongside the property is in fact RM 2.7, so there is a split zoning. This section was previously Schilling Street, which was vacated. That question came up at the Land Use Committee on Wednesday, and that's the answer. It does have split zoning on the parcel for the park. A daycare center of greater than 12 enrollees in a residentially zoned area requires a conditional use request. The Our Missoula City Growth Policy recommends a land use designation for this area of residential high density, which permits 12 to 23 dwelling units per acre. Now we are looking at the proposed site plan. At the sort of bottom right of the slide, outlined in blue, is the existing building at the front of the lot facing 10th Street. This is the building in which the daycare center will operate. The applicant proposes to locate the daycare center entirely within the existing structure. There are no additions proposed with this conditional use. The area that you see in green is designated as a future play area. The space is currently covered with gravel and weeds, and there is one trailer home on the lot towards the back, which will be removed. I'll address parking in greater detail later, but for now, there is one ADA space that is required for this project. There is also a proposed drop-off area in the front in the right-of-way adjacent to the property, plus a sidewalk that will be added as part of the project. Also, last Wednesday at the Land Use Committee, there was a question as to whether the ADA space could be in the right-of-way. It can't be in the right-of-way. It has to be on the property. If it were on the right-of-way, it couldn't be reserved specifically for the use of this project. This is the floor plan for the main floor of the proposed daycare. On this story of the building, the area for it is 1,034 square feet, and that is exclusive of the entry area that you see there at the front and also of the storage area there at the back. There is a basement floor that would also be part of this proposal. You can see here that there is an activity room at the front, a dining area, and then at the back, an office and a kitchen as well. Now I'll show you some pictures of building elevations. This is the south elevation of the existing structure, which faces 10th Street. Sort of in the foreground of the picture where you see the gravel, that area will be boulevard and sidewalk, and then in front of that, in the right-of-way, there would be the pickup and drop-off area. This is the east elevation of the building, which faces Franklin Park. And the bottom right picture in the foreground is where the play area would be. This north elevation faces the back of the lot. This is the storage area at the back of the building, what would be the storage area. And finally, this is the west elevation of the structure facing the irrigation ditch along the west side of the property. Now I'll cover the parking requirements. To determine the amount of parking that is required, Title 20 compares the number of spaces required for the prior use with the number required for the proposed use. The regulations allow a credit for the required spaces for the prior use, even if those spaces actually don't exist. In this case, the prior religious assembly use required 22 on-site parking spaces. None of these 22 spaces actually exist on the site. The proposed daycare for 13 or more enrollees requires 12 on-site spaces. Since credit is given for the 22 spaces of the prior use, even though they don't actually exist, and the proposed use needs fewer on-site spaces than that, no new on-site parking is required for this project, with the exception of the ADA space that you saw on the site plan. City Fire provided one comment to say that fire and life safety upgrades would be required to the building for the daycare center use that is proposed. These upgrades will be required with the change of use building permit per condition of approval number 1. We received one public comment from a Mr. Andrew Meyer, who is also here this evening, so I will quickly recapitulate and allow him to speak at greater length. Mr. Meyer expressed concern about the lack of on-site parking that's part of this proposal, the fact that the employees would use the angle parking adjacent to Franklin Park. He was concerned about the increase in noise from the use of the park by the children in the daycare, and also with the proximity of the irrigation ditch to where the daycare will be located. We include these pictures to show you the extent of public angle parking that is along the park on 10th Street and also on Kemp Street. Altogether, there are 50 spaces. We also had a question about extending the angle parking in front of the daycare rather than using the pickup and drop off. And the reason that that option was not considered is because when you factor in the driveway and the amount of free space, you would only get 1 or 2 angle spaces along that frontage before it becomes more narrow to go across the bridge. Now we'll talk about the review criteria for this project. The first thing to consider is compliance with zoning standards. This project meets all applicable zoning regulations and will meet building code and engineering standards at the time of building permit approval for the change of use according to condition of approval number 1. In terms of compatibility with the character for site and building design, it is an existing building and will fit with the residential character of the neighborhood. For compatibility with operating characteristics, the hours for the proposed daycare center are during the summer from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then during the school year it would be from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. In terms of traffic safety, the pickup and drop-off are intended to mitigate some of the effects of increased traffic in this area as a result of this project. Finally, staff recommends approval of the daycare center 13+ conditional use request in the RM 2.7 residential zoning district at 2200 South 10th Street West. That is my presentation, and if you have questions, we'll be glad to try and answer them for you.
Thank you. Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to say anything at this time?
Good evening. I'm Stuart Armstrong. I'm the Executive Director of Campfire, and I just want to thank you all and the public for reviewing our application. As I stated before, I believe that we have designed a safe and sustainable model for use at this particular site, and I look forward to your feedback and questions. Thank you.
Okay, so now I will open the public hearing. If you would like to make a comment on this project, come on up to the mic, say your name come on up and say your name for the record, and try to keep your comments to around 3 minutes or less.
Okay, my name's Andrew Meyer.
Maybe come all the way up first just to make sure
Okay.
that there you
My name
go.
is Andrew Meyer, and I live at 2201 South 10th West, which is just kitty corner across the bridge over the ditch. I'll try and be quick. I kind of almost wondered if I was wasting my time tonight, because interestingly enough, there's already a backhoe in front of the church. So, and one thing too about that is, they're saying there's no parking, but I know the church, they would park 4 to 5 vehicles in front on that gravel. And then the side road, they would easily park 8 vehicles there when they had church services. So I don't quite understand the fact that they're saying there's no parking there existing. Then go to noise, it's about 25 yards from my house. And the park is something that from noon to evening is noisy, but it's a bit over. And the mornings are quiet. And I can see with that many kids being dropped off and car doors slamming, it's going to be a lot noisier in the mornings. Second, traffic. There's already the bus line comes through there. And because of the bridge, they're going to site their drop-off right 10 feet from the bridge. And I can see issues there because I know down at the daycare by Franklin School, you don't even want to go by there in the mornings or evenings. Because if there's someone parked in front, people will park right in the street, leave their engine running, take their kids in, and it just seems to be part of the deal. Also, the traffic in our neighborhood is increasing steadily because of infill, and also now they put up about 2 blocks away a huge townhouse development of 52 townhouses. And if you know how our neighborhood is arranged there, it's kind of a horseshoe, and there's a bunch of streets that don't go to Reserve. So you've got 2 choices, go over to 14th or come down 10th. And there's probably a third of them are full now. You can already see the increased traffic. Safety. The ditch is very dangerous, particularly for kids who are young. It's clay line. It goes like this if you fall in. Secondly, at this location, you have the bridge maybe 25 feet down. If you fall in, then you have this concrete bridge with about that much headroom that child is going to be swept under. I'm not going to belabor it, but there are several children that have died in that ditch. And it's concentrating a bunch of kids right next to it. The parking are only the 8 spots. The park use, I understand there's going to be a new park in our neighborhood somewhat, but the park is already heavily used. I would say it's probably the most heavily used park in Missoula. I may be wrong. And so I'm a little bit iffy about all of us paying tax for the park, but then a private business or a nonprofit being right there and utilizing the park kind of as their backyard. And lastly, the boulevard in front of my house, I moved in 2005, a new house. And at that time, I tried to get the sidewalk sited on the street so that I would have 2 parking spots in front of my garage. As it is now, you have 1 unless you want to block the sidewalk, which I don't do even though I have a sidewalk to nowhere. It was put in 2005, and the rest of the neighborhood there has not been sidewalked except for 1 house. It kind of breaks, and then there's another sidewalk to nowhere. And what I was told at that time is that our neighborhood was sited so that there had to be boulevards on either side of the street eventually. And I note here that because they're a private business or not-profit, they're being allowed to put their sidewalk right on the street, not only eliminating 4 or 5 parking spots, but it's kind of off-putting that I couldn't get the sidewalk on the street, but for their convenience, they can. And one thing through there is an extremely wide right-of-way. You know, some streets in town, the right-of-way isn't very wide. Well, the right-of-way there goes from about 2 feet in front of the church building. And in fact, it's just about 2 feet off my front porch. It's a really wide right-of-way. So basically, they're utilizing the right-of-way for their own use, and there's no boulevard. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Is there any more public comment?
Good evening. My name is Rick Sampson, and I represent the church that is in that location currently. And I would like to say that when we decided that we were going to put the property up for sale, one of our concerns was that it would be someone that would benefit the community. And I really want to encourage the council tonight to approve the request, because we feel like this will benefit the community. And that's really about all I have to say on the matter. I've had a chance to chat with these people, and I think that they're upstanding folks, and I think they'll be a benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sampson.
Good evening. I'm John Webster. I'm an elder also at Faith Evangelical Free Church, and I'd like to encourage you to also approve this. We purchased that facility back in 2004. You know, I raised my kids there, and a number of our kids through our congregation were raised there. So it has been used with children for many years, and the churches before us too. Regarding the irrigation ditch, we never had an issue with any of our children in 14 years that we've been there. It's fenced off, and if any access is probably on the other side of the irrigation ditch. So just would like to encourage you guys, again, like Rick said, as we looked at selling this facility, we want to find someone and an organization that would benefit the neighborhood. My wife went to Campfire when she was young and was just a couple blocks away when she lived there, and she really enjoyed it. So I think it's a good thing for the neighborhood there, and just encourage your approval of this variance request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. So can people raise their hand if they want to talk about this? Okay, so any more public comment on this item? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. Thanks everyone for speaking. Are there any questions from City Council? Ms. Armstrong.
So I have a question for the applicant. You have a location on Clark Street currently.
Yes.
Are you vacating that location, or is this another location for Campfire?
This is going to be another location for us.
Okay, I have a follow-up. So you currently have 7 parking spots at that location and about 4 on-street parking spots. Is there a reason why you don't anticipate needing that same level of parking at the new location?
Well, I think that well, first of all, as it is now, it's probably similar in size, but you don't have this. Frankly, we probably could do without that parking lot, if I'm being totally honest with you, because there's enough off-street parking. So we have the parking lot. You're talking about the Clark Street address, is that correct? Right. So I inherited that building and I inherited the parking lot, but if you were to ask me, could I operate without that parking lot, I would tell you yes. If I could design it like we've designed the building on 10th Street with the drop-off, the ADA space, and then the ample on-street parking. So I appreciate your question. Does that help? Does that answer it?
Okay, go ahead.
What are your plans for connecting the sewer? Because it is not connected right now, and I know that's going to be quite an expense.
Right. Well, we're going to connect it, and that's the plan, and that's the backhoe is there. The person who would be doing it did not inform me that he was going to be parking it there. He's simply using it as a parking spot. But the plan is to hook it up to the city immediately.
Ms. Cares and then Mr. Wilkins.
If parking were required to be added on site, I'm trying to get a sense for how much space there is off other than the building. So if I were to say propose an amendment, an additional, I'm forgetting the word.
Requirement.
Additional requirement, an additional condition, to have up to 2 or 3 additional spaces. Do you know how much land would be left for you to create that play area?
Well, it's more. We have looked at this. And it's more of an issue of space once you're in there. Okay, so let's just back up. If you were to tell me design this situation and so that we could have more parking, I'd say, well, what we'd have to do is take the existing building and move it back. And then you'd put parking in the front. I mean, frankly, that would be the most ideal situation. But as it is, the only way to fit parking in there is it would be very tight. I don't believe it would be safe. And I think it would be a detriment to the property. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but I think you'd be really taking away, you'd basically be turning a green space into a parking lot. That would be the best way to do that. So what we've done is we've designed the most efficient drop-off and utilizing the parking that's there to simply try and work with what we have. If we had to add 3 spots, then frankly, I don't think it would be safe.
Sure. Thank you. That's helpful context. In relation to trying to understand how much land is there, could you try and answer that question? If we added those spaces, would there be half as much land for your play area? Are you able to address that?
I think see. So there's a whole trailer that goes back there, and it's pretty long. So you could. We're going to take the trailer out of there, and
Mr. Armstrong, can you hold on for a second? I think that Dr. DeBari is going to suggest that we put the picture on.
Okay.
Ms. Baker, can you help with projecting that? Sorry to interrupt you. I think it'll be helpful to have the graphic.
It'll help me as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would be even more helpful would be if we had a laser pointer, which we always talk about getting, put it in the budget.
So if you were to add the spaces, essentially what you would do is you would come in and you would tie in. You could probably fit 2 or 3 spaces, probably, facing the existing building, okay? But then what you're going to do is by doing that, you're going to create a situation where the only way to get out is then you're going to have to back in more into the play area. So just because I mean, I guess that's how parking works, right? You have to have room to turn around. So you may be able to fit 2 or 3 spots there, max. But then it is going to be so cramped in there, it's not going to create a safe environment.
Mr. Wilkins.
So I'm sorry I wasn't here Wednesday. I was out of town, so I'll probably ask a question that's been asked before. It's came to my attention that the irrigation ditch is full of water, right?
Correct.
You only have a 3-foot tall chain link fence back there?
Well, as it is right now, there's a 3-foot tall fence that faces the existing building off the road, and then off the back. Is it 3 feet back there as well? It 42 inches. So, but that being said, we plan on upgrading the fencing.
You're going to upgrade it to what?
Well,
because I don't think 3 foot's adequate. So
No, and my idea was to probably do a 6-foot fence if it's allowed. I'm not sure yet what the zoning is, but if it were allowed, I'd probably put a 6-foot fence all along that side of the building. You couldn't do it off the road. I don't believe that would be allowed. But we can put in, but they won't be accessing that once they're on our property. So to answer your question, 5 to 6 feet.
So I guess, maybe I'm not understanding. Are the kids in the playground, can they go to that fence and look down at the water?
No, well, first of all, no, as it is right now, it's almost, I want to say 5 to 10 feet off of the ditch, and you can't, there's not even an access, there's not a gate to get to the irrigation ditch once you're in the existing play area. So the only way a child could get in there would be to, climb the fence. But I would add, we're going to have staff there at all times. We're not going to let the kids out there and be on their own.
I understand that, but you want to take all precautions you can, and a chain link fence a kid can crawl. A 3, 5, 4-year-old, they can crawl up that fence and over before your staff would even see it. So safety is the biggest issue there. Okay, so we got that down. So the other question I have, I'm not that concerned about the parking more than I am the drop-off. And I say this because I live right in front of a daycare that's right across the street. And I see parents come and the car will be facing the right way, one will be facing the wrong way, they'll all be pulling out. I've seen cars get wrecked on the corner. Do you have a safety feature to keep everybody in the direction? And no,
Let
right?
me know if you find one.
That might be a question for Public Works.
Okay,
about how this is gonna
Public
set
Works
up
or
too.
whoever, but I really have a concern about that, because I see that every day in front of my house. And this is one of the best daycares in Missoula, but parents are parents, they're in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And so that safety concerns me quite a much. I guess the parking thing, parents don't really use that much parking until you have a Christmas or some kind of a function or something and then there's never enough parking. So you got to be aware of that too. Anyway, that's all the questions I have.
Okay. Quite a list. I was saying I have quite a list, and it's DeBari, Bentley, and then Von Lossberg. So Dr. DeBari is up.
I have a number of questions, but we'll see if some other folks ask some that were on my list. I have actually a question first for Mr. Harvey. I wanted to follow up on a comment that Mr. Meyer brought up with regard to sidewalks. And I understand that there is no sidewalk in front of this building currently. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so if under different circumstances, if this was a residence and there wasn't a sidewalk, or if a new residence was going to be constructed here, would there be a boulevard sidewalk required here?
Actually, this plan is not the most updated plan. We've had an engineer design this, and what we were looking at is this is the connection to the sidewalk with the bulb out there at the end of the angle parking for the park. We were lining that up, but then after we get after the drop-off area, we're actually going boulevard back here with the intention of building a bridge when the rest of the sidewalk system goes through on 10th. So there is probably about half the frontage, available frontage, that will be, or close to half, that would be boulevard. It would be possible to do boulevard right here too. It's just that we would have to do a transition across the driveway to a boulevard from this piece of curbside right here.
Okay, so the point that I was trying to get at is, if I'm wondering if this sidewalk setup and drop-off space is being designed specifically to accommodate this use, which may last 5 years, it may last 2 years, it may last 20 years, we don't know. And so is it customary to build infrastructure for a conditional use, whereas if this particular conditional use didn't exist, you would get a different boulevard, sidewalk, and parking layout on the street?
This alignment, this curb alignment right here would be the same if it was a store, a single-family residence, anything. The alignment is aligned with this alignment here with the curb. We're not deepening it for drop-off space. It's simply a parallel parking space that will be timed, or, don't park here a long time. Again, the sidewalk situation, what we like to do on these bridges is, and we've done this a number of times on and that's why this is drawn this way, is put the sidewalk on the bridge. However, there's a sidewalk on the other side of the bridge, and this is just too narrow. And 10th, although it's a residential, it could be a local collector eventually too, as it was mentioned, it's one of the through streets all the way from Russell to Eaton Street. So it would make a likely connection via Eaton to Spurgeon. So this is pretty much what we would build if it was anything else. Again, line up this. We like to line them up across driveways. We don't like to do transitions through driveways. This could be a double car garage or driveway parking with a 20-foot setback for parking, for a garage. So really, this is set up for just about any use. It's not particular to this conditional use.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And could I ask a couple more and then move on? So this is for Mr. Armstrong. I know we covered a lot of this stuff during LUP, but it's important to get it back on the record during the public meeting. And I know you were sitting next to Ms. Erickson from Parks, and she handed you a form that is associated with a permit. And so I just want to make sure that you would agree to work with Parks to investigate whether there's any that's our city clerk, that you would work with Parks to find out whether or not a permit is even required.
Yes, and I think we'd probably play it on the safe side and just acquire a permit. And then, of course, if we were to ever, you have to make a reservation if you want to secure something specific, but
sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And the permit is seasonal too, so it's not like you don't have to have it permitted year-round. But right. Yeah, I just want to make sure that you would agree to work with them to see what's necessary. Absolutely. And then my last question for you, for right now at least, is, again, during the meeting the other day, you talked about the number of day campers during the summer and students after-school participants. And could you reiterate what your plans are for the maximum number of participants for each user group?
Yes, we would be looking at a maximum of 50 students, campers for the day camp, and I would anticipate 15 to 20 max for that after-school care program.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll wait to hear what other folks have to say.
Okay, Ms. Bentley?
Can you say for the record the age of the students that are going to be attending your camp?
It would be, they're school aged, so it would be kindergarten through fifth graders.
Okay, so no 3, 4, and 5.
5 to 10 year olds, no ma'am.
And then would you be open to having it as a condition to put the 5 or 6 foot fence around the play area as long as it fell within the city zoning?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. I think that sounds like a wise idea.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it would just make me feel better to know that we.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's all I had. Thank you.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. Mr. Armstrong, you might be able to answer this. I'm just looking at a picture of the area, and I'm actually looking at the next street over, South 9th Street West, that looks like it ends in a cul-de-sac, and I'm asking if I'm looking at this correctly. There appears to be a pathway that comes off of that cul-de-sac that joins up with what looks like a pathway around the perimeter of the park that then looks like it, I cannot see it because of then trees in the satellite image, but I'm assuming that that then connects to the sidewalk where the angled parking is along 10th Street. Does that sound like an accurate description?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you could answer that.
Yeah. I live on 8th Street.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Was that your old? Okay. Mr. Hess.
Thanks. Really, all my questions have been asked, but I did have one question as a follow-up to Ms. Cares' question, I guess, and that is, if you were required to build off-street parking, which I'm in no ways advocating, but if you were, it seems as though you'd have to remove that ADA space, and then you'd essentially
You'd have to build it on the interior. Correct.
Okay, so you really would have almost no net benefit in terms of off-street parking, other than maybe one additional space.
I don't think so. I think maybe 2 additional, maybe, and I think it would be really tight.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there? Oh, Dr. DeBari?
This is a question for Ms. McCray. So during LUP, we talked a little bit about whether or not there was a requirement for licensing from the state, and we determined that it wasn't, but I understand you did a little bit of research regarding what state law would how state law addresses participation or the number of participants based on square footage. And I'm wondering if you could share that research that you did.
Yes, this is Mary McCray with Development Services. So when we received the application, it stated there'd be 60 enrollees, and I just wanted to check whether the square footage made sense for that number of enrollees. And initially I thought this type of camp may require state licensing, so I took a look at the licensing requirements. I took the square footage of the areas as described in state law, so it'd be the open areas, probably the dining area and the activity area. And again, it was a rough calculation. I had to make my own scale for the drawing, but roughly it came out to around 52 to 53 enrollees could fit. So I thought that was in the ballpark of the 60 that they were talking about.
So, Mr. Armstrong, tonight you mentioned that that your intention was for 50.
Yes, sir.
I want to get a sense for whether you think that's a hard number and whether it might be useful for us to consider crafting a condition around a maximum number of participants to address what Ms. McCray said.
So we had discussed that, and I think the theory there is that we will only have 50 children there at one time, but that doesn't mean we won't have up to 60 children enrolled in the program. So, in other words, they float. Some kids go Monday through Wednesday, and some kids go Thursday and Friday, and then we kind of put it all together and we shoot for 50 a day. So, but if we were to have a special event, or we'll just say a special event, and we may want to have more than that 50, that would allow us to do that.
This is probably for Ms. McCray again. Sorry for interrupting your writing.
Okay.
I'm going to make the assumption that at some point their fire department is going to do an inspection and they'll calculate a maximum occupancy for this building. Is that correct?
Yes, based on building code and fire code.
Okay, so I guess probably that issue is taken care of even if there are 60 participants, and let's say hypothetically the fire department said you can only have 50 people in that building at once. Not everyone can attend your function, I guess. That's what it comes down to. And so we're covered with this. We're covered in trying to craft some language or address this issue of maximum participation or maximum occupancy.
Yes, certainly to the extent that it would have to meet fire code and building code requirements with their change of use building permit.
Okay, Ms. Armstrong.
This question's for Mr. Harvey. So Doug, as it exists right now, the sidewalk goes and it stops at the gravel yard, and then it goes all the way over to the bridge where the bump out is. Is there a reason why we cannot continue to let them have head-in parking there, not put that sidewalk and boulevard in? It looks like they could have 4 spots plus an ADA there, and that sidewalk looks like it dead ends into the bridge as it is.
Okay, by ADA rules, they need to have an on-site ADA parking spot. It has to be within the property. That's some of the new part of that new ordinance that we passed with parking lots. The deal with, and I looked at angle parking in here, the deal with angle parking is you have to have a 10-foot separation right here. So the first car would be about like this, second car would be this, and then we'd go into the transition for the return for the bridge. And you know, 2, maybe 3 angle parking, but one of the deals with angle parking, you have to put a 7-foot sidewalk in front of it, which would be right here, and they would have to give some sort of easement. That's an 80-foot right-of-way with a 40-foot street in it, so we have about 20 feet of space to get parking in there. And so, you know, it's possible. We looked at continuing this whole, just mirroring this all the way down through here. The ADE kind of throws it off a little bit. But, you know, it would be possible if we did maybe some more research on the ADA, whether it would go out there or not. Like I said, the problem is you can't reserve it for your building if it's on public right-of-way by law, and we're dealing with that quite a bit.
Okay, follow-up, and then Ms. Bentley.
Could we work with Parks to vacate part of that right-of-way of that Schilling Street extension for an ADA space that could potentially also be used by Parks?
I assume so. You know, that would probably, knowing, you know, working with Parks, that would take a long time. So I don't know. You know, those are all things I looked at when we decided. We decided this was kind of the cleanest way to do it. Again, I have concerns, having worked around schools quite a bit with double parking, drop-offs. It's you know, it is a mess, and 10th could have higher volumes if it does go through stop control eventually or something like that.
Ms. Bentley?
I have a question for Mr. Harvey. I remember when we were dealing with Lowell School, we pushed, we were trying to move away from angled parking in front of schools because it was more dangerous because kids had to walk in back of the car because the way the car doors open up. Was that a consideration? And
well, one of the considerations is you know, angle parking is not the greatest thing for high frequency. You know, when pulling in, dropping the kid off, and backing out. I even looked at back-end parking here because that is safer for children and things. And again, you just lose so much space with an angle, with a 60 or 45 degree angle. You know, it's not like looking at 90-degree angles. And one of the issues is if you do angle, then it's going to be one direction. They come out and then they have to go across the bridge to leave.
so is the if we put angled parking in here, we would get 2 spaces, right?
Probably safely.
And with the drop off, we have
2 about.
So it's 6 in one, half dozen the other.
The angle parking
this
would
is
cost,
safer.
Yeah,
Okay.
the angle parking would cost them about 4 times as much too.
And this is safer.
I think it is. Yes.
Okay.
Angle parking is not a safe situation.
Okay.
Typically.
Okay. Are there any more questions? All right. Dr. Dabari.
I move to approve the daycare center 13-plus conditional use request in the RM 2.7 residential multi-dwelling zoning district at 2200 South 10th Street West in accordance with Missoula City Zoning Ordinance Title 20, Sections 20.05.020D, 20.85.070, and 20.105.0 030B2, based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval. May I speak to that briefly?
Go ahead.
I really appreciate the questions, and I hope we can carry on the discussion a little bit more. I think, as other people have indicated, that this kind of use in this area could be a real benefit to the community and specifically to this neighborhood. But I also think that there's a few other things that we probably need to work out a little bit more clearly in order to fully nail this down. And I hope that there is interest amongst folks here on the council to work on, as Ms. Bentley brought up, how we deal with fencing, and perhaps we can talk a little bit more about how that happens. And so I think that's where I am on it right now. I'm not going to say whether I'm going to support it or not, but I'd like to keep working on this a little bit more.
Okay, and we can have discussion on that motion. It's in order. I just wanted, as the chair, I just wanted to comment that we're spending a lot of time on this and getting into a lot of detail that we would normally do in committee, but I'm letting us do it here tonight because there's nothing else on the agenda, and we've already scheduled out for Wednesday. So we're just going to keep working on it unless somebody does something parliamentary-wise to stop that. So, all right. I have Mr. Wilkins, Ms. Armstrong, and Ms. Bentley.
So I'd like to put a condition on it that along the ditch in the play area that we have, I believe we can go 5 foot on fences, 6 foot, so that we have a 6 foot solid fence along there. I hope that's a friendly amendment.
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to take any friendly amendments right now. I think we should discuss what, because I'd like to talk about the fencing too, and so my hope is that we can come to something and then vote on it so that we're all comfortable with what the amendment is before we go back to the main motion, if that sounds reasonable to the chair.
I think I'd like to send this back to committee. If we can't do it Wednesday, we can do it the following Wednesday. But I think there's a lot of things on parking. I think there's fencing. I think all that stuff should be laid out, and I'm really concerned about drop-off, you know. So. Okay,
so there is a motion already on the floor, so I would have to check with Mr. Nugent about if, I can never remember if it, I know one person can send it back to committee before the motion is made. Is it different after the motion is made? Your mic's not on. Yeah. I also want to clarify that just because Dr. DeBari didn't accept it as a friendly amendment, I think he was saying that he did that specifically so we would keep talking about it. Not that he didn't support what you're saying. Because if somebody makes an amendment that's adopted as a friendly amendment, then everything keeps going and there's no discussion about the specific thing, and he's indicating he wants there to be discussion about that thing also. On this, while Mr. Nugent's looking something up, Ms. Bentley?
I wanted to add that I support, I think, the spirit of what you're trying to say, but I would like to add to it more, so I'd prefer that we talk about it because I don't think it goes far enough. So I hope that we can talk about it tonight. I don't want to, I feel bad adding 2 weeks onto the schedule.
Okay. Do you still want to send it back to committee, or can we keep working on it tonight?
Well, I think there's more than just the fencing, so yes, I want to send it back.
Okay. So I just reviewed what Mr. Nugent gave me. I'll just read it out loud because it's fun to learn about parliamentary procedure. Once the public hearing is closed, one of 3 actions may be taken. 1, a final vote may be taken. 2, any council member may return the matter to committee, Or 3, a member's right to return the matter to committee may only be overridden pursuant to Council Rule 7, suspension of the rules. So Mr. Wilkins has the right to send it back to committee if 2/3 of us want to keep it here, if 2/3 of the city council want to keep it here, then that's what it would take to override his prerogative. So I don't have a strong preference, and I'm chairing, so I'll see what people want to do. Ms. Bentley.
Thanks for the parliamentary update. I actually wouldn't read it that way. I would read it that we have 3 things to do, and the first of the 3 had already been done, and so it negates the other 2. But you're the chair, and so you decide when it's gray. I would like to make the motion that we suspend the rules and deal with this tonight. I really don't think it's fair to make this applicant wait another 2 weeks to move forward on this project.
Okay, that motion is in order, right? Discussion on the motion? Ms. Armstrong and then Mr. DeBari, unless it's a point of order. No, you were first, unless it's a point of order.
So as it stands, if we continue tonight, I would have to vote no on this, only because there's so many very important. I love the site. I don't love the building. I don't love the layout. I would love for it to be in that location, but not in the iteration that it stands now. I think the parking is if you want to be a good neighbor, melding businesses into neighborhoods is an art, and you have to be a good neighbor, especially if you want to stay there. And I just think there's so many things to work out on traffic and the flow, and like you said, where the building stands. You would love for the building to be toward the back of the lot. I think there are too many things now. If we aren't able to add conditions or change things, I would not be able to support it at this time.
Dr. DeBari.
I appreciate Mr. Wilkins' sentiments, as Ms. Bentley mentioned. For me, my main issue is to address the fencing at this point. My other concerns have been largely addressed, and I don't think all of the solutions are totally ideal, but I think they work and a lot of thought has been put into them. So from my perspective, I think we could address the issue of fencing in relative short order. We're only an hour and 12 or so minutes into our meeting, and so I'd be happy with continuing right now. If it ever gets to the point where we feel like things are bogged down, then I would support returning it to committee.
Discussion on the motion to hold this tonight and keep working on it. Ms. Karas.
It's my preference to continue working on this, so I will be supporting the motion to suspend the rules.
Is any public comment on the motion to suspend the rules and keep working on this tonight? Okay, I don't see any. So it looks like we're going to vote, and I always like to we're going to vote on the motion to suspend the rules and keep this on the floor tonight, just so everyone's clear what we're voting on, and I would like to do a roll call vote.
Okay, on the motion to suspend the rule, Bentley votes yes. Karas votes yes. DeBari votes yes. Heddle votes yes. Hess votes yes. Marler votes yes. Swaney votes yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins votes no. Armstrong votes yes. Would anybody like to change your vote? It's 9 ayes, 1 nay, 2 absent.
Okay, so we'll keep working on it. And where we left off was Mr. Wilkins had proposed an amendment that there be a 6-foot fence all around the play area. Was solid. And you said by the ditch.
Yeah, at least bordering the ditch. It could be all the way around, depends on what everybody else wants.
Okay, would the applicants like to respond to that? You have to come to the mic, sorry. It's so formal, I know.
No, it's fine. I just want to clarify, because I have a question. I think just the safest thing to do is to replace the existing fence, because I think you don't want, well, or maybe you do. I mean, we'll do whatever you want, but the way it is right now, it's, the fence comes off the back corner of that existing building. So, and then it goes all the way down the irrigation ditch line. So essentially, in other words, the building serves as a fence because that we go off of that existing building and then we hang a right. So if you wanted us to, we could you know, build the fence towards the ditch and then have it, and then, but, and that's up to you. I guess then you would eliminate if that's what you want to do, we can do that. I don't know if that's what you want to do, and that's fine, but that's not what exists now. I think what exists now is more than sufficient. It's just maybe not high
So
enough.
many hands.
Yeah.
So many hands. Okay. We'll stick with Mr. Wilkins for now.
So I don't mind coming off, like you got the fence right now, off the back of your building. But I want it to be at least 5 foot high, and I want it to be solid. Chain link, kids can actually crawl over the top of them.
You bet.
I've seen them do that. Yep. And I think that would cover my safety concerns.
Well, the intention for us was to do a wooden fence that was 5 to 6 feet high all along. So if that would suffice.
It would, but I'm just trying to make it a condition, so.
Okay. What I have a list: Cares, Hess, Bentley, DeBari, but I was wondering if staff might have a suggestion. Let's try a little more.
Mary McCray with Development Services. I just wanted to make a couple clarifications, things you might want to consider when you're thinking about fencing the irrigation ditch. The ditch actually crosses this corner of the property, so the condition couldn't be written to kind of run along the west boundary. In addition, ditch companies have the right to maintain their ditch and get equipment in, even if there's no existing easement. It's sort of a perpetual easement. They have to have enough room to get in. So I wouldn't define the exact location, because the ditch company, we'd have to write it such that they'd have to approve the location of the fence, and so that's something to think about. And then in past projects, there's been concern about solid fences in terms of if a child got over it, nobody can see it. And so in past projects, you know, that's sort of, and I think likely the best solution for safety of the children will involve a variety of things, supervision being one of them, fencing, helping out, and just general concern about perhaps the city dictating a single solution to safety, and if that fails in the future.
Let's take a 5-minute recess and then people can visit about this. The people who have experience with writing these kinds of things, and then maybe there will be a suggestion for us instead of us trying to do it on the fly. And I hear some people would like a bathroom recess, so we'll take 5. Thanks. Okay, we'll be back in order. Where were we? Okay, so I think we're back to trying to find the phrasing or language for the amendment. Did you want to try again, or that sounded rude, but
Well,
did you have another alternative in mind?
I'm going to withdraw my condition.
Okay.
And leave it up to staff to make sure there's an adequate, safe fence. And I'll let them write that up the way they see fit.
Ms. Bentley, I had a list.
Okay, I sidebarred with Mary and Brian and Mr. Von Lossberg and Mr. DeBari, and We came to the conclusion that there was a couple things that were important. One was not to really mention the irrigation ditch, consistent with our other policies. We don't require fencing around irrigation ditches, and really just focus on keeping it as simple as possible. So our idea was, and then also it has to be consistent with city zoning, where you can't have a 6-foot fence in the front part of the building, of the front part of the property. So we wanted to keep it really possible and say, add a condition of approval saying the existing chain link fence shall be replaced with a fence 6 feet in height wherever legally possible around the play area. And that's it.
Okay, that is in order. Discussion on the proposed amendment. Mr. Hess.
I think that we should add to that and all amendments like we normally do to pending, something about pending approval by the city engineer or the appropriate staff person. In this case, it'd be the city engineer. But that way, I don't want to talk about what the fence looks like. I don't care where it is. I don't care about where the parking is. I want us to follow the policies we've set, and I think that adding that caveat allows our staff to do their
Sure.
the job. That
and I'll take that as a friendly amendment. And may I speak one more moment about?
Yes.
So the other thing that was really important was that we didn't say that it was a solid fence. Dictating materials could get us into some liability, where best practice is not to have a solid fence, when on the other side of the fence there could be, you need to be able to see on the other side of the fence. And so we thought it was a risky legal territory to start dictating materials or what the fence looks like, and just leave it simple and keep it at that.
Okay, so including Jordan's addition, excuse me, Mr. Hess's
which is
addition.
pending approval by city engineer.
Pending approval by the city, by city engineering. Okay, additional discussion on the amendment, Ms. Cares.
Sorry, Ms. Bentley. I'm wanting to confirm that if a portion of the play area, for instance, where their land is near the ditch, according to your amendment, could they just have no fence at all right there, or would they have to go in a little bit?
No, because it talks about the existing fence, which doesn't go over the ditch.
Okay, so when you say wherever legally possible, you feel like that's not going to result in a place where there is no fence at all?
No.
Okay.
Additional discussion. Mr. Wilkins.
So I'm not even sure why Emily, Brian, and John are doing this when we're just going to leave it up to staff to make sure that's done adequately. Do we have to condition that to have you do that, or?
We have to condition it if we want staff to do something. Yes, Ms. McCray.
Mary McCray, I would just add at the end of the condition that it needs to be shown on the site plan and it needs to be subject to review and approval by Development Services. That would include meeting the fence ordinance and city engineering review.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this amendment to require fencing that complies with all of our laws and will be reviewed by staff, made out of an unspecified material to be determined on site? Okay. Dr. Dabari?
I want to say that I agree with Mr. Wilkins' intent to try to ensure the safety of the participants here, and I think the idea of crafting a condition, as Ms. Bentley did, that ensures that the play area, which is the primary place of activity on the premise, is fenced, will help get to what I think Mr. Wilkins and the rest of us are interested in doing. So I'm in support of that motion.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote on the amendment, and then we'll go back to the main motion, which is to approve the application.
As a point of order, this is City Clerk Marty Rabin. Does your motion, Ms. Bentley, include the language said by Ms. McCray that it'll be
Yes.
shown on the site plan, the fence location will be shown on the site plan and subject to review and approval by the Development Services.
Yes.
Thank you. On the amendment, CARES. CARES votes yes. DeBari. DeBari votes yes. Heddle. Heddle votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Marlar.
Yes.
Marlar votes yes. Swaney. Swaney votes yes. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong. Armstrong votes yes. And Bentley. Bentley votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
There will be a fence. Okay, back to the main motion. I have a list that had Ms. Cares. I can't remember if it was on the main motion or on the amendment. Go for it. You're up.
Maybe I'm not ready. I was coming into this meeting thinking that I was going to vote no on this. This is the time to be giving my commentary. Yes. Thinking I was going to vote no on this conditional use, but I think in the end I'll be supporting it. I agree as a parent of a child in daycare that pickups and drop-offs are indeed hairy, and that parking is really a helpful thing. And I think that the 2 drop-off spots will not be sufficient, but luckily, as the applicant agrees, there's a lot of on-street parking, and I hope that parking at Franklin Park will only be a benefit and not a detriment, benefiting this business and not making folks feel like they can't go to the park. This is the second daycare conditional use that I remember seeing on council, and both have involved quite a bit of discussion and public comment, and I appreciate the folks who have chosen to contact Marilyn and I about this project. I think that your time, Mr. Meyer, who's here today, but other people who have talked to us, has been well spent. I hope that you agree, because the project is better because of it. So I'll be voting yes.
Mr. Hess?
I don't think I was on this list, but I'll talk now if that's okay. I'm supportive of this. I'm sensitive to Mr. Meyer's concerns. I appreciate you coming down. I think that our staff will do the best they can to make a good project out of this at the end of the day, and I am confident that Mr. Armstrong will be a good neighbor based on his interactions with our committee and with our group tonight. I guess beyond that, I mean, I want to applaud our staff for the detail that they have and the thought that they've put into this, and I'll support the motion.
Maybe I have an old list, but next on this list is Bentley. You can pass if you don't need to say anything.
I support it. I've always thought from the first time that we heard this that it was a totally compatible use. I'm glad that there's going to be work with city parks to make sure that the impact from the nonprofit is, covered from the fees from the permit application for the seasonal permit. I am sensitive to concerns from the neighborhood, but on par, I think my higher concern is lack of affordable childcare in our community, and if not here, where? And so it's a perfect spot, and so if not here, where? So I'm going to be supporting it.
Ms. DeBari.
Coming into this meeting and even at the LUP meeting, I had several concerns, one regarding parking, one regarding the fencing, the other regarding impact to the adjacent park, and the number of participants. And I think all of my concerns have been addressed this evening. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of Mr. Harvey and the applicant in trying to come up with a solution for the parking. As I said, I don't know if this is perfect, but I think it's as good as we're going to get while maintaining sidewalk connectivity and some opportunity for drop-off and the ADA spot, while also not cutting into the play area in a way that would diminish that utility. I think we had it was 20 minutes well spent to talk about the fencing and take a recess and come up with some language, because I think we addressed Mr. Wilkins' concern about safety with regard to the ditch, and my hope is that staff and the applicant, again, can work this out in a creative way so that it meets everybody's needs. We've addressed the number of participants issue and the square footage, because the fire marshal will have a say in this, and we've also addressed parks, as the applicant has said that he would be happy to meet with Parks and Rec staff on this issue, so I will be supporting the motion.
Mr. Wilkins?
So I definitely support this. I mean, I still got my concerns about some things. I know you are going to have problems down the line because I have problems across from mine, and hopefully that you two can work any problems that come up, you can work it out. Generally, mine has got to do with drop-off, because no two people drop their kids off at the same time. It's like 10 drop their kids off at the same time, and it makes confusing. But I'm a grandfather of 2 twin boys. I know what the cost of daycare is, and I wish there was more daycare to help bring that cost down a little bit.
Any additional comments? Dr. Sweeney?
I'll be supporting the motion this evening. I also have had problems finding affordable childcare as well as finding safe childcare, and so I really appreciated the discussion this evening in regards to making sure that this facility is as safe as possible for the children that will be attending the daycare. And so just thank you to the staff for the work that you've done to this point and will continue to do on this project.
Okay, I think we're at the end of comments. I'd like to comment real quickly, specifically to say thank you to Mr. Meyer for calling me several weeks ago about this project before it was even on my radar. He brought it to my attention, so I was extra attentive to it when it came to committee, and I appreciate that. And even though things are not probably going to be resolved exactly the way that all the neighbors would like, I think that this project has gotten a lot of scrutiny and collaboration because of neighborhood input. I also wanted to mention, because we're supposed to mention all the input that we get on the public record, is when I was coming into the meeting, another 10th Street neighbor named Kaylee Burke called me, and she said that she was actually excited to have the daycare across the street. She had some mild concerns about parking, and I just wanted to disclose that other people there have opinions about it too. And like some other folks mentioned, when I came to this meeting, I was kind of feeling that we should require some off-street parking. I think that we discussed every possible permutation of doing the parking, and surprise, the staff did it right before they brought it here. But I'm really glad that we talked about it a lot, because it just helps us all understand. I feel that this is a pretty good place for the project, because I do see kids, under 10 years old riding the bus, and this is on 2 bus lines, and there's going to be good sidewalk connections, etc. And Campfire has been around for a long time. They're a reputable organization. So that's my 2 cents. And see, we already had public hearing. And I asked for public comment on the motion. Well, what the heck? Is there any public comment is there any public comment at this point? Okay, I think
Did you say public comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only comment I had is that I feel like this property is just trying to fit something in that doesn't quite fit. The building, the street, but it's probably too late, but it's like when I look at these things, I wouldn't even know I was in my neighborhood. You really almost have to go on site and look, and then it all becomes really clear. The ditch, the fencing, the parking, it all becomes really clear. And I'm still a little unclear about why the sidewalk in front of the park goes along where it does, but then it's going to come out to the curb in front of there, which, you know, I wanted my sidewalk on the curb, and I was not allowed to. I have a 10-foot boulevard, so just, I think unless you're there and you see the place, it's really hard to, I would never know from these diagrams.
Okay, thanks. I think we're ready to vote. Let's do a roll call vote.
Okay, this is on the motion to approve the daycare center with the added condition. And we start this round with Tabari. Tabari votes yes. Heddle. Heddle votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Marlar.
Yes.
Marlar votes yes. Sweeney. Sweeney votes yes. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. Armstrong. Armstrong abstains. Bentley. Bentley votes yes and Cares. Cares votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? It's 9 ayes, 1 abstention, and 2 absent.
Okay, we do not have, oh wait, we're not there yet. General comments of City Council. I will go first and say thanks everyone for the participation in that. And I also just learned from Mr. Nugent that motion to suspend the rules is non-debatable. So, okay, let's go to Dr. Sweeney.
I would like to, am I on? Okay. I would like to acknowledge and congratulate the Native American high school graduates from Big Sky High School: Tobias Adam, Dylan Arnold, Brianna Canning, Jasmine Cordova, Kyler Feathers, Nicholas Flores, Hannah Francis, Forrest Lester, Al Littleson, Bonnie Long, Kiana Malloy, Adam Marshall, Brady Matt, James Normandy, Tate Schlepp, Michael Shortbull, Isaiah Silvera, Kane Snyder from Willard Alternative High School, Brianna Fox Daniels, Kayla Gladue, Quayla Black, Vanessa Emery, Turkmany, Simon Grant, Sienna Povsha, Gage Reed, Julian Solomon Ferguson from Hellgate, Claire Adams, Chase Brewer, Shelta Chase, Pearl Castilla Nation, Antonia Coyen, Brianna Griffin, Honor Old Dwarf, Cora Phoenix Price, Alicia Ponce, Sydney Racine, Sage Red Boy, Evan Smith, Evan Stewart, and from Sentinel High School, Sierra Azure, Faith Belcourt, Ann Brummett, Silver Chapman, Chelsea Lulam, Cynthia Lawrence, Mosiah Sims, Elisa Staber Shelma, Julian Standing Rock, and Riley Wilkie. Also, I would like to welcome the participants in the Montana New Leadership, which is a program hosted by the University of Montana's Mansfield Center to educate, empower, and encourage college women to become politically active and to take on leadership roles. And lastly, I would like to thank Dr. Lori Walker and her Social Work 360 class, Haley Black, Caitlin Curry, Kat Hawkins, Summer Meserly, Lindsay Newton, Rick Reed, Arian Weathered, and Hannah Wilson for the work that they are doing in the Northside community as a collaboration with the Missoula Community Food Co-op, North Missoula Community Development Corporation, and the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition of Missoula County. Madzigrads to all of your work, the individuals that I mentioned, and I'm very, very excited that there was such a large list of Native high school graduates. Keep on going. Thank you.
Ms. Bentley?
Oh, it's a tough act to follow. I've been using my time on Monday nights to talk about events at the fairgrounds, and we had a number of 3 graduation parties this weekend that was really fun. Big heads up to everybody, including Mr. Dabari, that Monster Trucks is coming on June 9th and June 10th, and it's loud, and be prepared. And on June 16th, the Midtown Association and Glacier Ice Rink and the Missoula County Fairgrounds and 4-H are partnering to do a mid-tone melt-off, the symbolic handing off of the outdoor and indoor ice rinks from the ice community to 4-H for the summer. And there will be a brew fest and free ice skating and a petting zoo and sheep shearing and food trucks and all kinds of things. So lots of stuff happening, and big announcement coming next week. So stay tuned.
All right, Mr. Hess.
Thanks. A couple weeks ago, we heard from Bert Lindler up in the Grant Creek Neighborhood Council, and a few weeks before that, Dr. Sweeney and I heard from Mr. Lindler and other members of the Neighborhood Council about the bear buffer zone and trash pickup in that area. Residents were prohibited by city ordinance from putting their trash out before 5 a.m. And the Republic trucks seemed to come at about 5:02 a.m. And so it didn't give them much opportunity to have much quality of life in the morning if they like to sleep past 5. And I just wanted to report that Bert worked on this, and Bert's always everything Bert does is effective. So we had a solution within a period of a matter of weeks. And I wanted to thank Glenda Bradshaw, the general managing of hauling at Republic Services, for offering to reroute their trucks to correct that situation, and Jeff Dara and Jamie Jonkel at Animal Control and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, respectively, as well. Also, I regretted not being able to be here on Thursday when you all took an historic action to pass the settlement agreement to finalize our purchase of the water company. And I just wanted to state enthusiastically, with gusto perhaps on the record, that I'm proud of that action that y'all took, and I'm sorry I couldn't be here with you.
Ms. Cares?
Pass.
Mr. Wilkins?
I got to echo Jordan's thing about Thursday. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I was out in Minnesota going to a funeral. And then I'd also like to talk just a little bit about what we heard during public comment today about this list that was in the newspaper about taxpayers' money. Not all that was taxpayers' money. So, you know, when you look at the parking meters, that was financed by parking meter money. The people that come down and put the money in the parking meter, that's where that was financed. Yeah, there's some, and there's other things there. I don't think I can go through all of them, but there's a few other things there that wasn't taxpayers' money that bought. But the other thing, you know, I keep hearing about the mall, and we're giving money to the mall. Well, we're not giving money to the mall. We're giving money to help construct a street, to move water lines, to doing sidewalks, that sort of thing. And it helps the mall, but it also helps the neighborhood and helps anybody in that area. So, and I also want you to remember, there's a lot of malls closing in the United States, and quite a few more than normal. I think there was a piece even in the paper about it. Our mall is surviving because of some of the development that they're doing, and just think of all the people that are employed there. They're Missoulians. So it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So I know sometimes taxpayers' money, they feel like it's we're wasting it, but I don't see any waste in that taxpayers' money the way we're spending it now. And if there is, please let me know, because I'll do my best to not support it.
Ms. Armstrong, pass. Dr. DeBari?
Several items. I couldn't have said what Mr. Wilkins said any better, so thanks so much for that. Also, to Ms. Bentley, I appreciate the fact that you sent out that heads-up email. I thought that was great, a great effort on the part of the fairgrounds, not only just to give notice about noisy events, but just to let people know what's going on there. And I would encourage the leadership at the fair to perhaps contemplate more neighborhood-friendly activities other than monster trucks. And the last thing, actually, I'll let Brian talk about, so thank you.
Ms. Hadall? Mr. Von Lossberg.
Dr. DeBari took me off guard there. A few things. Quickly want to thank Dr. Swaney for her comments about the graduates and add my congratulations to those folks as well. Thank you for mentioning those names. Secondly, I want to mention a number of people have contacted myself and other people in council relative to our the administration's withdrawal from the Paris Accord. And at this point, I want to simply say thank you to Dr. DeBari for initiating a conversation about this in council. I'm confident that there will be action in this regard. And I want to say that we have a very strong energy conservation and climate action plan that this council unanimously adopted back in January of 2013, and I want to emphasize unanimously. And simply say our resolve on this issue is as strong as ever, even more so particularly in consideration of this administration's abdication of leadership and willful distortion of the truth. And I think you'll see action on that consistent with those thoughts. And lastly, on a sad note, I want to recognize the passing of Pam Clevenger. You might have known Pam from the farmers market or the Clark Fork market. She was involved at the Good Food Store and with Homemakers Orchard. She passed away over the weekend unexpectedly, and she was a bright, shining, passionate soul in this community. I had the pleasure of working with her ever so little on the Clark Fork Market Board, and she will be sorely missed. So, thanks.
Okay, we do not have any committee reports. We do not have any new business. Are there any items to be referred other than the ones listed on the agenda? Do we have any, well, under miscellaneous communications, petitions, reports, and announcements, we have published the administratively approved agreement report. Ms. Cares?
There's nothing published today, and if there should have been, it's not there. And I was trying to remember how it looked before, and I think typically if there isn't anything, then there's not a link, so maybe it was a gap.
Ms. Rabine, do you have anything to add on that? Not to put you on the spot, but...
I've had a staff person who usually prepares that report who's been on vacation. So we probably didn't hold up our end of the bargain while she was out.
So if there were administratively approved agreements, we'll put them on next.
Add them to next week's council meeting. Yes.
So the links don't show up properly on this. I can't do anything there. Okay. I'm hilarious. We're adjourned. Thanks.